Hey gamers, Blindy here. It's November 2024, and as I play through my backlog of games, I decided this time I would choose Hades. So I want to ask, have you played Hades? Or any other game from Supergiant Games? Let me know in the comments, did you like this game? Or Bastion? Or any of their other games? Or maybe you're just interested in playing this game. If so, what is it about this game that you're interested in? If you're looking to see if this is a game you'd like, hopefully I'll be able to help you out today. So, I've never played Hades before this, but it's not my first Supergiant game. I've played Bastion a couple times before, and I really enjoyed it. Seriously, if I was to rate Bastion, I would probably give it a 9. And playing through Hades, there's a lot of familiarity here. You can see how the art design is like Bastion and their other games as well. And the way they really dedicate a lot of focus to their voice acting is quite evident. Every voice is amazing, with a touch of humor, and how much the voices add to the game. It's a facet that could easily be overlooked, that if they just do a good enough job, it'll be fine. Just check out my Ace Combat 7 review for an example of that mentality. But Supergiant Games made sure to make every line sound amazing. The only other game I've reviewed that rivals Hades in the voice acting department is Disco Elysium. And if a game cares that much about its spoken lines, then the rest of the game is usually done well also. And it's not just the voice acting that's amazing. Like I said earlier, the art is beautiful too. There are multiple areas in Hades, and each one looks unique and colorful. I love how vibrant every room looks, and there's very little confusion as far as what is scenery, or what can be interacted with, or what things can damage you. We can call Hades a game, but really it's kind of more like playable artwork. To get your hands on this game, you've got quite a few options. So originally this game was released for the PC, Mac, and Switch on September 17th, 2020. Remember that time where we all had to stay inside for months at a time? This game came out at around that time, making staying inside a bit more palatable. And a year and a half later, the Steam Deck was released in February of 2022. And that combination of the Steam Deck and Hades was apparently a very popular combination. In fact, Steam gladly advertises this fact by stating on its website that Hades is one of the most played games on the Steam Deck, and uses Hades by name in much of its promotional material. And yeah, sure, it's a perfectly fine game for the Steam Deck from my experience. But if that's not your system of preference, feel free to pick it up for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X or S, or even iOS. I'm super curious to know how a game like Hades plays on an iPhone. I struggled with parts of the game with a thumbstick and numerous buttons, so having only on-screen buttons sounds like a challenge beyond the difficult nature of this game. But I didn't play this on my phone, for a few reasons. One, it's the type of experience I would prefer a controller for, and Steam recommends this game for the Steam Deck, and I trust Steam. Two, I don't own an iPhone. I don't actually own any Apple product, so it would be challenging for me to play it on my phone. And three, playing on a phone actually sounds kind of miserable. I'm sure it's not terrible, but you're playing on a tiny screen with your thumbs blocking parts of it, so that doesn't sound ideal. And assuming you play with a controller adapter for your phone, it's still on a really small screen. The Steam Deck screen isn't that huge either, but at least you've got a bit more space to see what's going on. And I only have an LCD version too. I bet it would look a lot nicer on the OLED Steam Deck, but hey, I only have the one option, so I'll play it on what I got. If you're curious, it played well on it. I was able to put between 1.5 and 2 hours of game time into a charge, which is pretty nice. You can get around 2 full runs in before your low battery warning, especially if you die frequently, like you will early on. And you aren't going to hog a ton of space on your device, regardless of which system you're playing on. Steam recommends 15 gigs of space, but my install uses just over 11 gigs, which means that even phones can install this game with little issue. Unless you're a hoarder of apps, in which case you should probably clean up your phone. You don't need most of those other apps anyway. And as you might expect, this game is verified on the Steam Deck. And you don't have to spend an arm and a leg on it. Normally it's $32.50 Canadian, but sale prices have it as low as 66% off, just over $11, though more frequently you'll see it just 60% off at about $13. With the quality of this game, I would say that either $11 or $13 is perfectly fine to pay for a game such as this. Another thing to keep in mind real quick before I move on is that, as of this recording, Hades 2 is available in early access on Steam, so the sequel is already available for those of you that can't get enough of the first game. I don't know a ton about it, but from initial impressions it looks like it plays much like the first game, which is fantastic for those wanting to extend their Hades experience. One great thing about this game was how it was developed. It seems that after their previous game, Pyre, Supergiant Games looked to develop a game using more feedback from their players to fine-tune the gameplay. As the feedback from the players came in, they were constantly modifying the game to provide just the right experience they wanted their players to have, which is an awesome way to develop a game. That process is carried over into Hades 2, being in early access to get the gameplay as refined as possible before expanding into a full release. And I think this strategy has paid off for Supergiant Games. Players seem to love this game. It's scoring a 93 on Metacritic, and it's crushing a 98 approval rating on Steam, with 247,000 reviews. And this game is pretty friendly for most of the gamers in your life, but the ESRB wants you to know a few things first. They rate the game as a T for teen. There are alcohol references. Those are specifically from the appearance of Dionysus, the god of wine. There's no drinking of alcohol, and realistically, there are no images of alcohol either. It's all within static conversations. There's also blood in this game, and it's similar to the alcohol references in that it's not part of the gameplay. You'll see blood in 3 spots. One is the death screen, one is the pool of blood that you emerge from every time you revive, and one is a few drops that show up when you enter a chaos gate. You don't spurt blood when you take damage or leave pools of blood from the dozens of enemies that you cut down. So yes, there's some blood, but it's not gory. They warn of mild language, and yeah, the language is really mild. It's more like your Ivy League educated father scolding you. There might be insults in there, but the words are a challenge to comprehend to know if you're being insulted or not. There are suggestive themes in this game. Aphrodite often mentions how she wants to spend some time with you when you escape. But to be honest, I never really got the impression it was anything inappropriate for youngsters. More provocatively is her inset images, where she doesn't have any clothes on, so it could let some imaginations run wild. And this game has violence. Yep, it sure does. Lots of it. Like I said earlier, none of it is gory, but you're beating the crap out of a whole bunch of creatures, so yeah, there's lots of violence. Okay, from this point forward, I will be talking about the story and gameplay and more details specific from in the game. If you are the type of person with sensitive ears, or I don't know, maybe you complain a lot or something, just know that there might be spoilers beyond this point. I will do my best to temper how much I reveal, but I have to let you know some of the details for this to make sense. Even though I will try to give you some details without revealing too much, it might be more than you're willing to hear, so this is your warning. You play as Zagreus, the son of Hades. You find out your mother, Persephone, has left Hades, and your goal is to break out of Hades to find out why she left. It's easy. All you have to do is leave Hades. The underworld is broken up into a few regions. You start in Hades proper. Okay, before I go any further, this game is a little complicated to describe. The game's name is Hades, the main character's father is Hades, and the starting environment is referred to as Hades as well. Because of the nature of the starting area, maybe I'll refer to it as the Halls of Hades. Hopefully that will provide a little bit of clarification. In the Halls of Hades, You can choose to chat with various characters that linger and find out more about your backstory, learn about the relationships and motivations of others, and manage your upgrades. Once you leave the halls of Hades, you escape from your room like a teenager sneaking out after dark. You drop down from your window and begin your adventures in Tartarus. After you make it past enough rooms, you'll make your way to the fields of Asphodel, but don't be fooled by the name. Those fields are quite deadly. And past Asphodel, you'll be in the Elysium field. And, well, it's not a luxurious experience either. Everything there wants you dead. At least you're not alone in your escape attempts. You'll get lots of support from the Olympian gods once they find out about your efforts. And that is the basic premise of the story. You are trying to find your mother as you try to break out of Hades. It seems that everything is holding you back. You are persistent, stubborn, and you grow stronger as your resolve becomes more and more steadfast. It's a real don't give up on your dreams type of story. Now, this game is one of repetition. It's the nature of a roguelike, or I guess more specifically, a roguelite. Before I go any further, I want to clarify the difference between the two, just so you have an idea what the technical differences might be. So in reality, feel free to use roguelike when you're referring to roguelites. It's such a minor difference that it really isn't worth getting into a major argument with someone about. They both get at a similar idea, so let's not be nitpicky since they're both made up terms anyway. Roguelikes are modeled directly after the 1980 game Rogue, hence the name. It is procedurally generated, features permadeath, dungeon crawling, hack and slash, and a few other aspects. Roguelites are any deviation from that set of categories, so in the case of Hades, most of those rules apply, but it does not feature permadeath. At each death, you have the ability to upgrade your character to have a stronger subsequent run. When it comes down to it, most games that are in the conversation of games that take inspiration from Rogue are really roguelites. Hades, Slay the Spire, FTL, and popular games like those are just outside of the scope of what a roguelike should be. But I'm going to be honest, if you call a roguelite a roguelike, I'm not going to care at all. I know what you're trying to get at, I understand where you're going, so I'm not going to get stupid about the details. Alright, are we all on the same page now? Good. So Zagreus will attempt run after run, fighting his way through the different ever-changing levels of the underworld, and eventually, he's going to die. Each time he dies, he gets a one-way ticket back to the main hall, where he can do everything over again. He can chat with the various characters, visit the Mirror of Night to upgrade some skills, and prepare to do it again. Now, during each run, you'll get stronger with the help of the Olympians. They provide you with boons, in this case augments that empower you during the particular run. Each Olympian has a large number of boons that they could provide, and you usually have a choice of 3 to choose from. In each run, you will meet several gods, often multiple times, each willing to impart some of their benefit to you. And each boon, each of these augmented abilities, comes in a different flavor. They have varying levels of rareness, which affects how much it helps, as well as how much it increases power when it's upgraded. And because the Olympians that you come across are randomized, every run will be different, starting from your initial boon. That means each run has to be adaptive, and you have to be flexible on determining the strategy you think might work best for you each time. And in its most basic form, that's the game loop. You spawn, you talk to characters, you upgrade, you fight a ton of enemies, you die, you do it again. Now that you have a grasp on how this game is played, we can now talk about some of the specifics about what makes this game as charming as it is, and maybe a little about why this game isn't perfect. The combat is a hack and slash. You'll have a choice of up to 6 weapons, and you'll be progressing one room at a time, killing all the enemies and collecting the room's loot. Then you move on to the next room and keep going from there. You'll have 4 set attacks available to you per weapon, a basic attack, a special attack, and 2 attacks that utilize those attacks in different ways, such as combining it with your dash. Beyond your attacks and dash, you have 2 other abilities. One is your cast, where you launch a gem at an enemy, causing damage and enabling greater damage to be dealt. And your last attack is a boon that has to be chosen. Referred to as a call, you can use an Olympian's aid to provide a short-term boost with a strong ability. You can do things like block all damage for a brief time, or deal a ton of damage with a large chance to crit, or some other options like that. As you progress from room to room, you'll come across other objects that will help you. Some rooms have gems, or darkness, or other objects that help you in between runs. They won't help currently, but they will be useful when you return to the Hall of Hades. Other objects will help you in the current run in different ways, like coins to purchase helpful things with Charon, or at any of Charon's wells, or pomegranates that upgrade an ability that you already have, or maybe a centaur heart to increase your max life for this run. To gain any of these, you first have to clear the room of its enemies, unless you get a little luck and come across an empty room, though those are very uncommon. Speaking of empty rooms, occasionally you'll come across a fountain. There won't be any enemies, and the fountain will refresh some of your health, which is nice. Again, it's another rare room, so you might go a few runs in a row without seeing one. And the fountain rooms are one that you have to purchase an upgrade for. Visit the house contractor and pay a small fee, and you'll be able to get fountain rooms, as well as quite a few other ways to make the various levels of Hades a bit more comfortable. So it may sound like there's a lot to the game, and early on it may feel that way too. But you don't have to worry. You'll be seeing all of this stuff again, and again, and again. Repetition is the name of the game. Whatever you skip this time around can be focused on in subsequent runs. The rooms will change each run though, so don't expect to revisit something that you might have skipped. And without going into a ton of detail on some of the remaining rooms, I'll just say that the fights can vary depending on the room. Some you'll have to survive 45 seconds as you get swarmed. Other rooms have troves that reap nice rewards if you can complete the challenge, and some have challenges of the gods, where there's a challenging fight to potentially earn 2 boons in a single room. As you encounter enemies, Olympians, and other stuff, you'll slowly start to fill out a codex, a book that Achilles provides you early on. It automatically fills up with information and lore as the number of your encounters increase. On the surface, it's really cool, but it can be a pain when it doesn't load up the correct page after an update. A few other things you'll encounter that might help you along your way. One is the Mirror of Night. It's the main way that you'll upgrade yourself to improve your runs. There are quite a few upgrades, and you can unlock more using keys you find within the rooms of the underworld. It's mostly good, but it can be surprisingly difficult to figure out how many keys you have on hand to be able to use them. They show up on the screen, but they're dimmed, making them difficult to read. You also have access to the Fated List, which is essentially an achievements list that rewards you with some goodies once you complete a page. It's only really useful if you specifically try to complete the pages. And you'll gain access to a whole bunch of keepsakes, which are upgradable objects that can provide a powerful boost. They can do some really good stuff, so take a close look at them and test them out. And I want to throw this comparison out there. If you haven't played Hades, maybe you'll be familiar with Slay the Spire. It has a similar structure to that realistically. In both games, you start each run with a basic loadout, gain skills and abilities as you clear rooms, navigate various paths, and take on a mini-boss in each level before advancing to do the same thing in a stronger region. If you happen to complete a run and defeat the boss, you can play again with a challenging upgrade that makes the next run more difficult. It's a cool system, and it provides players with a way to continuously have a similar experience, but with a slow and steady ratchet to the difficulty to keep your skills sharp. And that's roughly how the gameplay works in this game. So let me talk about some of the really cool stuff that I enjoyed about this game. First, I love petting Cerberus. It's simple, but it's nice to pet the dog, chat with him, and give him gifts. The voice acting in this game is phenomenal. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish when a game has good voice acting and amazing voice acting, but I think all the voices in this game are pretty amazing. All the characters have such cool personalities. Their voices fit their images pretty much perfectly, and the voice talent nails their lines. And if you're looking for a comparison, my review of Ace Combat 7 has a great example of voice acting that is very much on the opposite end of the quality spectrum. It's really bad. And if you've played Disco Elysium, you'll be familiar with high quality voice acting, and I would venture to say that Hades is better. For example, Hypnos is goofy and a bit absent-minded, and the conversations between him and Zagreus are humorous, but not silly. It's balanced really well, and it's like that throughout the game.
Whoa! Hey, you got turned to ashes by those floating brimstone crystal-y type things. Next time one's turning you to charcoal with those beams of theirs, how about you step on over to the side?
That's not a bad idea.
And it's even more impressive when you almost never come across the same line of dialogue twice. The conversations are always new and never get stale. They did a fantastic job. And I've made the comparison earlier, but I get vibes of Bastion in this game. Bastion had a narrator that described your actions, and while you don't get that level of narrator interaction in this game, the voices have a similar feel. And the voice acting isn't the only reason you should have the volume up. The music is also really nice. Heck, people love just listening to the soundtrack to this game. It's that good. The entire listening experience for this game is top notch, and let's be honest, how many games can you say that about? Ultimately, Supergiant Games created a beautiful environment with a great story and pretty intuitive controls for their game. They did a whole lot really well, and the experience pays off. But it's not a perfect game. One of my biggest issues was in Elysium. There were quite a few times where I would be getting wrecked by an enemy I couldn't see. They could essentially hide behind the gate. They're right next to you, but the gate image blocks visibility, so you might be getting pummeled without easily being able to identify who is destroying you. And much of my other issues stem from the repetitive nature of this game. It feels like you might be able to explore a bit, but realistically, you'll be seeing the same room layouts over and over again. And when you start getting further into the game, you can often spend about an hour on a run, only to die near the end, then have to do it all over again. You can't really get a feel of how to defeat those last bosses because you see them so infrequently. It's in the nature of the game, I get it, but it gets really deflating having to spend that much time to die at the same spot you died the previous run. And my last bit of bickering comes from the final boss. Every enemy and every boss previous to it is straightforward and as you might expect, but the final boss is a two-phase fight. Why? I don't know. No one likes two-phase boss fights. One of my favorite games of all time is Breath of Fire for the Super Nintendo, and the single worst aspect of that game is that every single boss fight is a two-phase fight. At least in Hades, there is no mystery in how much health you need to knock down before the final boss falls, unlike Breath of Fire, where the second phase leaves the remaining health a mystery. But it still sucks here. So I think that kind of wraps up my thoughts. If you need a roguelike or even a roguelite that you want to dump a bunch of hours into, How Long to Beat says you should take about 23 hours to complete this. I took about 34 hours, so I was on the slower side, and that's not even considering that a full completion of this game requires many more completed runs beyond the one that I managed. If you want, you could be playing this game a whole lot, which is great news if you love this game. So with all that said, would I recommend this game? I think most gamers would enjoy this game. If you're looking for something that's challenging, that balances skill, precision, and a cool story, yeah, this will do the trick. The art is beautiful, I love the voice acting, the music is great, it has a lot of things going for it. But if you don't like feeling like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, or you don't like playing games where you lose that feeling of progression, you might get frustrated with this game. Near the end, you play for nearly an hour and die to the same boss, and do that for half a dozen times in a row, and you might start getting real tired of this game. But if you like that type of game loop, you could put in literally hundreds of hours into this game. This game is replayable, not only because it's exactly what the genre requires from you, but because there are ways to continuously provide a different challenge for each run. Or maybe you just want to find out more about the story, or maybe you want to fill out the codex, or maybe you want to complete the fated list. There are a bunch of little things you can try to do beyond your first completed run that you can always be busy playing this game if you want to. Let's finish things up with a rating. I'm going to give Hades a 9 out of 11, 82%. Much of the game was great. There are so many good things that they do right, but the game felt like it wasn't progressing, and I was just getting frustrated. And whenever I got into Elysium and I got blindsided by a hidden enemy, I got annoyed. Overall, it was a ton of fun, marred by some late game frustrations. Well, before I go, let me show you a brief look at the final boss fight. So I covered a lot, but I didn't cover everything. Was I fair? Was I wrong? Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. The successful YouTube channels brag about their Patreon pages here. I won't make you suffer through something like that, mostly because I don't have a Patreon page. Instead, I'll say that if you enjoy chatting about games, join me on Discord. I have a great time discussing games, and I'd love to meet some of my viewers. Thank you folks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, a like on the video would mean a lot. And if you really enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe. I try to put out a new video every few weeks, so it'd be nice to see some familiar faces. And hey, my last goal was to hit 25 subs, and we blasted right past that with my last video. We're sitting at 38 as of this recording, so let's aim for 100 subs this time around. Again, I appreciate your support, and I appreciate you hanging out with me today. Without you, I'm just a weirdo talking into a microphone. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.